Looking for my card case. Baruch Hashem, now that we have multiple drivers at home. So my son took it out and he remembers putting it on the dining room table. I just have to share this with you. So I'm asking Shmuel, where is it? Short, long story, but short. It was in the Magash Chalot that someone had put away, obviously after Shabbat. So with the fact that we found it, I think is a miracle. But
it is.
Okay, here we go. So firstly, we want to wish Bala Teitecha Teitchem L'Shalom for 2 weeks. When was the last time? Just the two of you? אף פעם. ב-30 שנות נישואים. רגע. כלומר, זה לכבוד.
זה טיל שחרור.
וואו, תסביר לי, למה זה?
ליוון.
וואו, איפה?
מה עשה את הכל?
איזה יופי.
כל אשר יעשה יצליח.
נכון. לרפואת דניאל בן. Wow. Hi, רפואה שלמה. Okay, hello, Hindi and Etty and Becky and Shelley and Sarah and Bella. So today, as you know, is when we have progressed basically from the stories, the Tfilot of Torah and Nevi'im, again, which we saw in Sefer Shmuel. And we saw that what Chana does in Sefer Shmuel is basically transforms Tfilah, right? From something that always accompanied the Karbanot to something that, or a phenomenon of turning to Kadosh Baruch Hu, albeit still, where is she? She's in front of the Mishkan. So it still is viewed as something linked to Pulchan, to Avodat Hashem. And as still all the ideas that we mentioned in earlier shiurim, namely the idea of recalibrating our values, Parshat Mishpatim, Le'avdo b'chol levavchem, izuhi avodah shebalev, and that all stands. What we're going to see, though, is that the next stage of Tfilah that we find in Sefer Melachim, interestingly, and by the way, some of you are saying, why don't we find, Tfilot in Sefer Shmuel? I'm waiting for Becky to say, we have somebody Mizmorei David, right? We have Mizmorei Elim.
I said that last week.
Because we said it last time, B'diuk. And we could open up all of Sefer Tehillim, and we really could open up Sefer Shmuel and find the parallels, even in David HaMelech's life, teaching us that, of course, there were always personal expressions of tza'aka, of bakasha, of halil, bahuda'ah, right? Everyone see that? Meaning so much so that it's not as if David invented the concept of Tehillah, of Tehillim. What we're referring to, though, is Tfilah, and this is the reason why Tehillim, even though they are incorporated in our Tfilot of today, they're not considered Tfilah in the sense of, let's say, Amidah, Shmona Esrei, is because Tfilah, as we've seen, especially by Moshe Rabbeinu, is something more collective, number one. And even the case of Batitpalel Chana Aliba, even Chana's Tfilah, which she begins Alatz Libi Bahashem, ultimately becomes Insur Ke'elokinu, is really Lashon Rabin. In addition to, always connected still to the concept of Mikdash, which is why Shlomo's Tfilah is going to introduce, on one hand, is going to continue this theme, on the other hand, is going to introduce something new. Yes, sorry, Hindi.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. No, but when you say that the Tehillim is not really like Tfilah, but when it comes to Hallel, there are overlapping of things that we do say. So then what's the difference?
Beautiful, beautiful. So that's very important to mention. Again, even last night I was singing, we had a kumsitz with students, and I was explaining to them how the mizmorim that they're singing are really tfilot. So really, Hindi's right? What is the difference? So we talk about this when we speak about Hallel. Hallel is one aspect of tfilah. Really, the primary, remember we just spoke about palal being judgment, right? It's going to be more the calibrating of our values through bakasha. So really, a tefillah is more bakasha, which is why all the Parshanim ask about Chana. So where's her bakasha? It seems to be Hallel, but really her bakasha is by the end. Yarim Hashem la'aretz v'yarim Hashem yadin afsei aretz. That Yarim Keren Mishicho, right? That he should lift up the Keren of Mashiach. He should bring salvation, right? So here also, and the reason why Hallel is not Tfilah is because Hallel only overlaps basically with one aspect of Tfilah, which is the Hoda'ah, but so much of tefillah is the bakasha, which you don't really see in Hallel. So I hope that answered it, which brings us then to the next tefillah, really, which is tefillat Shlomo, which is perfect because our next Yu'or is Rat Hashem in 3 weeks from now. Then we're going to speak about the next tefillah, which is, believe it or not, we don't find another tefillah in the sense of, wow, so that, and that we hear, Labriut, we hear about, again, Mizmorei Tehillim, different expressions of Hallel, of David HaMelech. We hear Hashem telling Yirmiyahu, Al titpalel ba'ad ha'am hazeh. Right, but then the next tefillah that we're going to find, anyone know? Just to get you excited for 3 weeks' time, when Bella's going to share with us how wonderful her trip was. It's not until Daniel, right, in Chutz La'aretz, Daniel's tefillah. And then after that, who's the next tefillah?
Esther?
No, Esther Imshat doesn't have a tefillah. In Midrash, he says, Ayelet HaShachar. The next tefillah is Nehemiah's. So that will bring us back to Shabbat Zion, and that will be, I think, a very appropriate end of year tefillah of Tanakh as well. So let's take a look now at Tefillat Shlomo. What does Tefillat Shlomo add? So now Hinti is going to be looking for the Bakasha. We're also looking for the connection to the Mikdash. Well, what do you know? It makes a lot of sense. If until now, even Chana, when she offered her Tefillah, it's in the context of the Mishkan. So Shlomo is going to offer his, not just in the context of the Mikdash, but at the time of Chanukat HaMikdash. So we're in Malachim Aleph Perek Chet, and not to worry, I'm going to review the Tefillah with you. And Sarah knows a little bit of the background, Becky as well, Anna from the Wednesday classes, where we saw that Shlomo first went to Giv'on to offer karbanot, and then he offered more karbanot in Yerushalayim. Basically, he's making a very clear demonstration that he's moving the center of worship from Givon, where you only had the main Mizbeach, not the Aron Hashem, to Yerushalayim, where there's an Aron Hashem, and now he's going to build the Mizbeach, and he's going to build a magnificent Mikdash. So now that the Mikdash is already built, and there are numerous Midrashim, he offers the Tefillah because he's trying to bring the Aron in, and the gates are closed, and he has to say, but the basic pshat is, at the time that now there's a central place of worship again, which you didn't really have since Shiloh. So the first thing that Shlomo does to reestablish then this place, take a look at the beginning of Perek Chet. I hope that you have your Tanakh open. And right before we turn to Hashem, אז יקל שלמה את זקני ישראל את כל ראשי המטות, נשיאי האבות לבני ישראל, אל המלך שלמה ירושלים, לעלות את ארון ברית השם מעיר דוד, היא ציון, right? Sion, which literally means the marking place, right? He basically is moving the previously distinguished place of where the Aron was. Now he's moving it to Goren Arav Nahayibusi, to where he has built a bayit. And notice the repetition of the word Vayikahel, but obviously reminds us of Vayakil Moshe at the time of the construction of the Mishkan. And of course, there are going to be numerous parallels between the building and the construction and the inauguration of the Mikdash with that of the Mishkan. And in case you're not sure, take a look at Pasuk Tet. In ba'aron rak shnei lochot avanim asher hiniach sham Moshe b'chorev asher karat Hashem and b'nei Yisrael b'teitam me'eretz Mitzrayim. And I'd like to posit that what the Navi is going out of his way to do is not only to show us the parallels of the time of the inauguration of the Mishkan and the Mikdash, but is bringing us back to Har Sinai. Bringing us back to Har Sinai, to this set of luchot, automatically brings us back to Tfilat Moshe, which you know very well is really when Hashem taught Moshe the art of Tfilah. That albeit we learn different aspects of Tfilah from the Avot. The first national Tfilah, where Hashem explains that you can appeal to Hashem as a God of Rachamim, is not until, if you remember Parshat Ki Tisa, is not until the luchot at Chorev post Chayta Iyel. And therefore, as almost an exposition to Shlomo's Tefillah, that's exactly what he's bringing us back. He's drawing this parallel. Reminding us, obviously, of at the end of Sefer Shemot, that Anan Malei Tahar, meaning The end of Sefer Shemot, Banan Malaya Tamishkan, which brought us back to Har Sinai, Banan Malaya Tahar, V'lo Yachlu HaKohanim La'amod B'Sharet, that's V'lo Yachol Moshe, excellently Kanes Yachol Moshe, also to go up to the Har, Mipnei Hanan, Ki Malek V'od Hashem Et Beit Hashem, almost verbatim. And therefore, it makes sense that as opposed to what we saw in Sefer Shemot, which wherein the next scene should be Chanukat HaMizbeach, again in Sefer Bamidbar, or in Sefer Vayikra, the Chanukat of the Kohanim, or in Sefer Shemot, the Galut of Hashem. Here, what do we have? We have to go back to first Amakom of Tefillah. And that's what Shlomo establishes. Starting Pasuk Bet, as Amar Shlomo, Hashem Amar Lishkom Barafel. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Tefillah and see that there are different aspects of the Tefillah. The primary one, and let's even say, the first part is from Pasuk Yibet to Pasuk Chaf Aleph, right? This is where he is going to tell Hashem that, Hashem, I can't believe that you, who are transcendent, are now choosing to become immanent in this world. And his main statement is, Halo Hashemayim u'shmei Hashemayim lo yichal kalucha. Again, if even the heavens cannot contain you, then how is it that I can build this bayit for you? So he goes back, right? And he basically explains, he gives a bracha, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael asher diber b'fiv et David avi u'biyado milei lemor. This is not a fulfillment of my wish. This is a fulfillment of Hashem's wish to David, who so badly wanted to build the bayit, who wanted to build the Beit HaMikdash. And remember, what did Hashem answer ultimately to David? You cannot build a bayit for me until I build a bayit for you. So first, I'm going to build you a bayit, and that's Pasuk Yudchet. Vayimar Hashem al David Avi Yana Shahayam Levavcha Lebnot Bayit Lishmi Ativote Ki Hayam Levavcha Rat Atalot Bayit. You, David, you can't build me a secure bayit until your bayit is secure. How is your bayit secure? When you finally have a dynasty. How do you have a dynasty? Have a child. And therefore, Shlomo's first part of the tefillah, notice it's not really called a tefillah, as Amar Shlomo, because is there any bakasha here? No, it's a statement. What's his statement? Hashem, you fulfilled your word to David, right? You gave him a bayit, and then you said his son will build him a bayit. Look, I'm the one through whom your word is being fulfilled on both levels. I'm the one through whom a bayit of David is being fulfilled, and I'm the one through whom a bayit for Hashem is being built as well.
What about David not building because he has a lot of blood in his hands?
That's not till Divrei Hayamim. Bill is asking another explanation that David is going to offer based on Divrei Hayamim, which we don't find in Sefer Shmuel or in Sefer Malachim.
So it's like a hashlama. There were two reasons.
The primary reason was David's
bayit. Mention his father's kid.
Exactly, bidyuk, because the Shlichut Tamim does say that Shlomo's want to compensate with shalom. Bidyuk. And so, like you could argue that that's part of the reason why David's bayit is in shalom. But the primary reason his bayit is in shalom is because he doesn't have a son yet. David understands from that he has to finish securing the borders and then have a son in a state of security.
But he had a son before that. He had a son before.
Bidyuk. So that seems to be one of the bases for David knowing that maybe Shlomo is going to be the one to inherit him. But it's not clear. Bidyuk. So that's why, what does he do right after? He has sons. He probably thinks it's one of those sons. How do you ready it? Not Shlomo. What does he go ahead and do? Secure his kingdom. Meaning, go ahead and conquer, right? If it was because of Shlichut Tamim, he should stop conquering, but he dafka continues to conquer because he knows he has to have a secure kingdom. As mitzuyad. So this is part of Shlomo's statement. Ken pasuk chat. He says, okay, not only am I the Mencha Hayotzei Michalatav, but also by Yakam Hashem et Tvaro asher diber through me, Va'akum tachat David Avi. Not only am I establishing the bayit because Beishev al Kisei Yisrael, Kasher Diber Hashem, I'm fulfilling David's bayit that Hashem promised. But not only that, Bevna habayit l'shem Hashem Elokei Yisrael, and I'm building Hashem's bayit. Beautiful. Vasim sham makom la'aron asher sham brit Hashem asher kavat im avotenu b'otziot ha'meretz Mitzrayim. And even though Hashem never spoke about necessarily building a Beit Tvul, a beautiful place, nonetheless Hashem did speak about having a makom for the Shekhinah. So I'm basically recreating the Mishkan in a much more magnanimous form. Pasuk Chaf Bet. Take a look at this. We had Shlomo Amar. Now, Vayamot Shlomo Lefnei Mizbach Hashem Neged Kol Kahal Yisrael Vayifros Kapav Hashamayim. Everyone, take a look at this. This is the basis for learning, because we're going to see in just a moment that now, and is what we're going to see tefillah. Without actually seeing the verb of tefillah, we're going to see bakasha. And therefore, because we're going to see bakasha, Chazal look at this and say, oh my, this is clearly a tefillah. And we're actually going to learn so much from this tefillah. Namely, number one, what is one of the positions of tefillah? So if you're wondering why people do this, it's because Vayifros Kapat Shamayim. Now, what does this remind you of? Vayifros Kapat Shamayim. So Bella saying, even a position is like taking something from Hashem.
Isn't that the Kohanim?
So very nice. So not all the Kohanim, actually. I mean, the Kohanim, yes. Except for the Kohen Gadol, can't lift it above the tzitz. So his hand would be outstretched.
Why weren't the Kohanim there with Shlomo HaMelech? In other words, why wasn't there the idea of the Malchut and the idea of the Kahuna at his tefillah? I feel something.
Very nice, because it's not about, that was his introduction. Mm-hmm. His tefillah is not about Malchut, or at least not about his Malchut. Who is it about? Malchut Hashem.
Malchut Hashem, okay.
So very nice. First, we find by Vayifros Kapat Hashemayim. It reminds us a little, by the way, of Yidei Moshe Emunah, right? Machamat Amalek. And turning to Hashem, basically for trust, for support. Vayomar Hashem Elokei Yisrael. Ein kamocha Elokim. You're supposed to say, oh my, we know these words from Aleinu, and yes, they're taken from here. Right? Shlomo begins with Shabach. He doesn't make up Amidah. Everyone, you only see Amidah. You only see Tefillah until now in what position? Amidah. Standing before God. Shlomo's going to introduce something new. The only other thing, or you had a Tefillah, B'hishtachavaya, when you offered your karbanot. Right? Vayizbach, vayishtachaveh. So those are the two positions that we're familiar with. So let's take a look. And by the way, are we still familiar with it? Yeah, that's not full prostration. So that we know. So we're going to see Amidah is not new, and Ishtachavaya is not new. So what's new? Stay tuned. You kept your brit and your chesed. Now we already spoke about how Hashem fulfilled his word through establishing Beit David. So what does he mean, the brit? So take a look. Why does he call it a brit? Because if you remember back to Shmuel Bet Perek Zayin, Hashem said, I'll do this on the condition that you continue to follow the mitzvot, which is the brit, which is not just the brit of David, it's the brit of all of Am Yisrael. So that's what he's referring to here. So now what he introduces is not just that Hashem fulfilled his word in a broad sense. Hashem fulfilled his word because it was part of a covenant of David walking in the path of mitzvot, which isn't just a David covenant, it's an Am Yisrael covenant. And it's not just about, again, David then deserving to have a son who inherits him, but it's about David's malchut never being cut off. David says, and you remind Shlomo before he dies, on what condition? That you keep the boots of Torah or mitzvot, which is why, and the Mishorer of Tehillim of Pechet says, I don't understand Hashem, right? You broke your brit because Malchut Beit David was destroyed. And the Mishorer then realizes, well, actually you didn't. Again, the brit was, if we would walk in Torah or mitzvot. So I guess we didn't, which means that once we do, then you'll reestablish Beit David. Right? And this is where so much of our emunah and Meshichut comes from. Arayom. Yeah, Ken?
In actual Tanakh, though, is this the first time that the actual word of tefillah is used?
No, we had Chana, and even before that we had Moshe. Not that Chana,
but it actually uses the word tefillah in the, like you said before, like Hallel and things like that.
Yes, there we had tefillah. Yes, but this is another.
I think you had it also in Pinchas, no? Vayipalel, no?
That was Vayipalel. Why Kenzie's mentioning. That was more judgment. And Chazal associate that with tefillah.
Right.
Not Imshat. But by Moshe we have real tefillah. And by Chana as well, but Tefillah Chana Aliban, you're right. That's why we said there really aren't so many tefillot Imshat, right? Chazal will see tefillot in every Mizmor of David. Chazal will see a tefillah in, Be'et Chanan al Hashem and Moshe's Tchina, right? But this is where we're going to find actual tefillot. V'ata Elokei Yisrael ya'amena dvarcha asher divarta. Here's where we see, by the way, the actual verb of emunah. Emunah doesn't mean faith. Emunah means support, right? Which is where we get the idea really of trust. Ya'amena dvarcha asher divarta. Hashem, support what you said to Abdacha David Aviv. Ki ha'omnam yeshev Elokim al haaretz hinei hashamayim v'shmei hashamayim lo yichalkalucha. God, are you really going to be involved with us? Meaning, until now we saw that tefillah meant what? Tefillah meant, under extenuating circumstances, what do? You can turn to Hashem and basically bring the presence of God into this world. So Shlomo's asking, does this really work? Meaning, I don't want this just to be a place of karbanot. I want this to be a place of tefillah, where people can come here, instead of having to bring you into this world, you're already here. But he says it doesn't really make sense because you're everywhere. And therefore, so what did I do? Here we have it. I want you to turn to my tefillah, the el tchinato Hashem Elokai, l'shma el arina ve'el hatefillah asher avdacha mitpalel lefanecha hayom. I want you to listen to my tefillah, which is about listening to the rina and tefillah that I'm davening today. What does he mean by this? Hashem, I'm about to daven that this bayit should be a place of tefillah, not just aba'at korbanot. But my tefillah is that this should be a place of rina and tefillah that you should listen to. Isn't this transformative? The rina, the rina, the tefillah. So, as ma'od manien, shechazal mevinim et rina vayaronu gam kesimcha v'gam ke yir'ah. Isn't that interesting? Ranunu is both simcha and yir'ah. But definitely, Medok is more both trembling, which could be out of excitement, but it could also be out of fear. The same expression. So here, Shlomo is really transforming. Everyone says he's not transforming tefillah. What's he doing? He's creating the first Knesset. There should be a place that people go to, not just Metsuyan. Sarah's right. This isn't just going to be a place of tchina. And when do you have tchina? When you really need something. Tefillah is when you're coming even on a daily basis to recalibrate your values, which is what our entire year course was about. So everyone just nod your heads. Excellent. Yana, they are different.
Shiny?
Yes.
But the Beit Knesset is really more of a place of like a tzibor. It's not like, it's like not when you want the personal or your own, or the fact that we learned from the Avot that anytime you're in any place, you could stop and do tefillah. So then what is this?
Call hakavod. Again, he's 100% right. Right, that's why I say he's creating the first Beit Knesset. Right, he's talking about when the people are going to come together as a nation. In other words, does private tefillah and tchina still exist? Yes, even though we haven't really seen it in Pshat. Why? You're supposed to say, what do you mean? Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Har, the Ohel, the Har, the Sadeh, the Bayit, right? That's what Chazal are trying to teach us. You can offer tefillot anywhere. but it wasn't established. That's the whole point, right? Even till today, tefillah at home is not established. That's why Corona created something new called tefillat chatzirot, right? Meaning that's not the ideal. The ideal is to do what? To come to a big knesset. And even for personal things, you ask the tzibor to come together.
But even the individual, it's recommended that even if he has to daven the yachid, he should go into the Beit Knesset to daven.
Ein tefillah k'tefillah b'Beit HaKnesset. I was going to add that also. Sarah, thank you. That you've never davened a personal tefillah in Beit Knesset, going into an empty Beit Knesset in the middle of the night, crying your heart out. Nachon, that's very powerful. It's more powerful than davening in your living room. Even though, does it dismiss a tefillat chatzirot or tefillat hasalon? Of course not. But that's usually like when you're davening in your salon, it becomes more personal tefillah, right? In the Beit HaKnesset, that's going to be the more formalized, no question.
Also, they know where.
Beautiful. And what is a Beit Knesset? A Beit Knesset is an assembly hall. Thank you. A Beit Knesset is an assembly hall. Shlomo knows. Is it only for tefillah?
No.
It's also for karbanot, chavrati, and me'achuz. People, I've been saying, oh my gosh, you would go to the Beit HaMikdash for what? To have a barbecue. You would celebrate a bat mitzvah there. Right? Everyone see this? You would go for what? A class trip. Meaning you go to hear a shiur. Right? It wasn't just, okay, karbanot and tefillah. Right? Till today. That's a Beit Knesset was an assembly hall. People would daven there, they would fast there, they would hear shiurim there, they would hear, a political speech there. It would also be a place of chagigot. So to be for what? By the way, I think I shared this with you, that the goal of a Beit Knesset, right, is really, Yechezkel talks about it, it's be a mikdash ma'at. Right, for people to see as a mikdash ma'at, so that they won't lose sight of the goal of having a Beit HaMikdash. Right, they'll keep that consciousness. So, all these like shtiblach is not an ideal, right? The whole idea of Rav Goren establishing, the Beit Knesset HaGadol, Heichal Shlomo, was supposed to be a heichal. They called it a heichal. And if you look at the outside, it looks a little like the Ulam of the Beit HaMikdash. Nachon. I wanted people to realize we're slowly coming back to Yerushalayim. This is the stage before Bniyat Beit HaMikdash. And what happens, unfortunately? This Beit Knesset, shtibel. So I really thought, this is the first time ever, historically, that Beit Knesset were closed. Nachon, here in Chutz La'aretz, everywhere. And I remember thinking that, I get it. That's Hashem doing. Hashem is saying, you forgot about the goal of a Beit Knesset, b'diuk, you should yearn for, stop going to Itztadion Teddy, for a football game. Get together, ideally in Beiti Beit Tefillah Yikarei L'chol Ha'amim. And I was so sure that every time, by the way, at like 2 o'clock in the morning, my husband and I would go for walks, and we would go around the Beit Knesset. And I cried every time to see the lights off, and just the Ner Tamid there, and I was so convinced that what was going to happen at the end, that when they would open up the Beit Knesset, everyone was going to come from their Tefillat Chatzirot with their Sefer Torah, and like on, Yom Rishon, that they would be exactly, mamash, all the different kilo, we would all dance together back to the Beit Knesset, and everyone would realize how we missed it, and how we missed Beit HaMikdash. Isn't that something? And it didn't happen that way. And especially, I would say, until the mask, right? Until they met like 4 weeks ago. I don't know about your Beit Knesset, but ours in Alon Shvut, there was still a feeling of emptiness. Finally, in Yerushalayim also.
People are still.
And that wasn't the point. I'm sick. You don't have. That's why I asked you. Everyone came back. So even I was just in England, and they're also, the Rabbanim were saying people haven't come back. even to the big shuls, they haven't come back. So we
Sonny,
have this.
Sonny, you know why? Because the Minyan Chatzera connected, it gave a very intimate davening that you don't have in a Beit Knesset. Even when we
exactly
got
what
Hinti there, it was a different feeling. I can't explain it. It was.
So what Hinti was saying, on one hand, it's true, and that there's a goal though in being in a Beit Knesset. That's what Shlomo's about to establish. On the other hand, since he says, I get it, like people like davening in their chatzer and in their living room, and it doesn't dismiss that, but it's so much more powerful. So let's take a look at what Shlomo is saying now. Yeah, basically he says it already at the beginning. Again, Pasuk Lamed, V'shamat el tchinat avdacha, v'amcha Yisrael, asher yitpalulu al hamakom hazeh, v'ata tishma makom shivtcha l'hashamayim v'shamachta v'salachta. Right, so he's already saying, what are we going to be asking for? Forgiveness, right? Which makes sense because he just mentioned Brit, which is all about how we're going to follow the mitzvot. So we're going to follow the mitzvot, but Hashem, we're going to mess up. And therefore, please let this be a tefillah for slicha. Now, he's going to explain that from Pasuk Lamed Aleph through Pasuk Nun Gimel. So everyone, please follow with me. He's going to explain now the different matzavim, literally the different situations for when one would daven. And this is amazing. This is like a tefillah handbook, right? Everyone say, see? And now, until now, when did people have tefillot? We saw what was the tefillah? A bakasha. If I would ask you, even Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, what was Abraham davening for? We saw salvation of stone. Nachon Yeshua. What was Yitzchak davening for? Shiduch. Nachon Abayit. What was Yaakov davening for? Hatzalah from his brother. B'diuk. What was Moshe davening for? Mitzvah, Slicha. Right? So basically, Shlomo's going to use, what was Chana davening for? B'diuk, a child. Right? So, and what Shlomo's going to do is he's going to go back and realize all the things that have been davened for until now. And this now should be the place of tefillah, right? Basically, a stairway to heaven, right? Instead of, once again, when Hannah was coming, she was saying, Hashem, please come and be involved in my life. Shlomo says, can you always be here so that every time we come in, I don't have to call you, right? Rather, what will happen? You're there. A direct line. Everyone see that? Right? So let's see. Shlomo has a short outline. Ezra Nehemiah is going to be a little longer. So let's see. Pasuk Lamed Aleph. Et asher yachata ish l're'eu, v'nasa bo ala lalato, u'ba'ala lefnei mizbechacha b'bayit hazeh. Let's say a person swears, right? He sins, and he swears to his friend, no, I didn't do this. And basically, if we open up our mouth in an incorrect way, then v'ata tishma hashamayim, v'asita v'shavateta davadacha l'harshia rasha, l'teta kol rashu, l'tzik tzadak, l'tet lo kitit kato. God, what do you do when we do something wrong? You judge us. You punish the bad. You reward the righteous. So what we're already going to see is, again, he wants this to be a place of, on one hand, mishpat, but let's keep going. What if we mess up, though? And then you punish us with an enemy. What are we going to daven for? Salvation from our enemies. What does that remind you of? Okay, or Yaakov Avinu. Nachon? Which is why he links it to an Allah. Barach me'eh oyev. B'diuk. V'ata tishma hashamayim. V'salachta lachatat chamcha Yisrael. V'ashivotem al adama asher natata lavutam. Which is why he uses the same terminology as Yaakov Avinu. Bring us back. Right? Even if temporarily we have to go out, bring us back. Which maybe is why he also connects it to an Allah and a Mizbeach, right? Again, using our words and eter yacholiot. So that's number one. Pasuk Lamed Hey. V'yatzer shamayim v'lo yamatar. There may be, excellent, Ra'ab, b'diuk, and there won't be matar. Where do you get this idea that we can daven for rain? Remember Rashi says, V'adam ayin lavodet adama, that's tefillah. But never said they're tefillah, right? Rashi. Nachon, but who's to say that our tefillah? So it's clear that, again, how do we get rain? Keep the mitzvot. Where does someone get this idea that tefillah can bring matar?
Eliyahu?
But that's not yet. That's later, meaning Eliyahu gets it from Shlomo. Yafeh. Choni HaMagel, we dealt with, gets it from here. Where do we get this?
The man?
Matar.
The man?
The man, which was also Lashon Himtir. Okay, so you ready for this?
David?
What?
David, not David?
That's it wasn't really a tefillah. You have to do something. You're right that Bayatar Haaretz, that was after he brought a korban. That wasn't rain. That was an ot.
The Mabul was rain.
The Mabul was rain. Yafeh. And also Stomen Amora. What was that? That was Lashon Himtir. Right. So basically, but it was Lashon sending things down from Shamayim. So
that was the first time.
Yafeh. What did Avram realize? What was he doing? Don't destroy. Nachon. And Hashem saved Gena from Matar. So Sarah is saying, I don't know, because it's not that good for water, but that Hashem, that we can daven. Yafeh. Okay, by Yitzha'ku, right? So we can learn it from the Midbar as well. Atza'aka. Yafeh. Gena, Anna, maybe Moshe as well. Or maybe it's Shlomo, right here. Right? He's the one who's going to codify it.
So it makes sense that it could be starting here.
And
they finished conquering the land, and they're living in Shalom, and they're an agricultural culture. They're very dependent on rain.
Now, by the way, Becky's right that during the time of David there was a famine also, and he had to do something. Remember the story of the Gibonim, and then also the story of the Dever. So he had to do something. Shlomo says, let it be a makom also of tefillah, right? And not just that they have to change their ways. Yeah.
But can I just ask you a question? In these three concepts that he's bringing up, is it like he's trying to change Hashem's way of dealing with us, or is this actually like what he's trying to say? Use these examples. Like, is it like I'm trying to recharge you, Hashem, and think of these case scenarios because don't judge us on this.
Beautiful, beautiful. So more the latter, more the second thing that you said, meaning Psukim Chavchet Talamid is where he asks Hashem to allow this to be a place of tefillah. What does that mean? He really is changing it, right? Not just a place of pulchan. He says, and by the way, Chana changed it a little. He basically is saying, can this be a place, a direct line, right? Everyone see this? Can you be imminent in our world so that under these circumstances, can tefillah work as well? In addition to, do we have to change our ways? Meaning, does it cancel Vayam Shamoah? No. Of course not. Again, number one, when you come to judge us. Number two, when we're being punished from our enemies. Number three, when we don't have rain, which of course is because of our actions. But can we also daven for it? What's he trying to say? Well, we have to change our ways anyway. Even before we change our ways, by davening can... Exactly, because why? Why? That shouldn't work. No, it should, because what is tefillah? Recalibrating our values, right? When we go till today, when we go to the Kotel and, the Moitza declares a Yom Moitza, Rabbanim declares a Yom Ta'anit. Right? Why does that work? Video. Nachon, have we really changed anything? No. I'm changing my thought. That's what tefillah is. Nachon, Parshat Mishpatim. Remember this? And so basically he says, can this be the place where we come and daven even before we change our ways? Because we're going to realize that we did something wrong. And we're going to turn to you and tefillah for our rain. First, then, why? And he says it, Pasuk Lamedei. Be'atzer shamayim v'lo yematar, ki yachtu'u lach v'tpalu al hamakom hazeh v'odu et shmacha, u'mechatatam yishuvun ki ta'anim. Again, what's the order? Answer us, right? We're going to daven. You're going to punish us with lack of rain. We're going to daven. You're going to answer us. And then what are we going to do? Then, everyone see this? That was ki ta'anim. Okay. That will be accomplished through tefillah. Ra'av kiya ba'aretz, deber kiya, same thing. Shidafon yarakon arbe chasil kiya, any agricultural disease, kiya tzer lo ivo beret sharab, kol nega, kol machala. So any type of sickness, nachon, personal, national, kol tefillah, kol tchina. So Hindi feels much better. Even personal ones. Are people going to come here? They were just diagnosed. They're going to come. Asher tia lechol adam. Individually, l'chol amcha Yisrael, or nationally. Asher yedun ish nega lebavo. When we find out that corona is spreading, what are we going to do? We're going to come and outstretch our hands. He's giving us a position. He's giving us an outline. Again to this place. And because this will be machon shivtacha, it'll be easier. Why do I keep calling it a stairway to heaven? Not only because of the song, but because that's what he's saying. I know you're transcendent, but this bayit is going to create imminence, which will make it just a direct line to talk to you. So that's why we're going to come here. But until now, Kedushat Adam. But until now, Kedushat Hamakom was a place of what? Adam ki. What do you have to do? You have to bring the korban. Now, what's he saying? We didn't appreciate. It says, "V'tpalu al Hashem," and then what will happen? "V'ata tishma Shemayim machon shivtacha, v'salachta v'asita v'natata li'ish kachot rachav asher teidat levavo, ki ata yadat levatchat levav kol bnei Adam, leman yerucha kol hayamim asher him chayim al bnei Adam asher natata lavotei." Then take a look, pasuk mem aleph. He says, who else is this going to be a makom tefillah for? He creates this. This did not exist beforehand. V'gam el ha'chri. Bidyuk. Why does Shlomo want this to be a place for Nachrim also? So Bella saying because he intermarried and he's a universalist, and he realizes that this Beit HaMikdash is not just about the manifestation of God as a we'll call it a particularistic God of Am Yisrael. Hashem isn't just our God. Hashem is whose God? God of the world. And therefore, this should be a place, but it's this is where you come to daven, not to a minzar, not to a misgad, not to a, you name it. Nachona, then, wait a second, right? This God is the God who is the God of the world. And he's hoping through the Beit HaMikdash to create a greater sense of monotheism.
Maybe that was the problem. It's too fast.
Too fast. Maybe they weren't ready for this. Okay, or he thought that maybe now's the time because he has all these international, not just marriages, but, positive relations with the other nations. Now, they can come for all the reasons we can come, but let's take a look. When will the Nachri come? To recognize your name. How are they going to hear that your name is great? They're going to hear that your nation comes here to daven and you answer them. They're also going to want to see, right, what's great about this God. But because this is going to be machon shivtacha, Shlomo realizes that the goal of God is not just to be our God, but the Kadesh et Hashem Ba'olam. And is it a good thing? Of course, it's a good thing.
I think he is giving it
too fast, meaning in the end it's going to be a little dangerous, or in the end it's a good thing, but they still have their alternate places of worship, which is why Zechariah says, one day they'll come to the Beit HaMikdash, and then they'll go back and they'll keep worshiping their gods. But let them also recognize that Hashem is the primary God. Huh?
But Shani,
yeah.
But that's why I think it's also interesting, the fact that like whenever we went up against, people that destroyed us, it wasn't just enough for them to destroy us. They had to destroy the Beit HaMikdash, which they knew was ultimately the source of where, where they recognized.
And therefore they saw it really as like a war against our God. No question. Exactly, meaning they were trying to undermine our identity. Excellent. And that's why he says,
that's why Kristallnacht came before anything else.
It's an excellent point, right? The complete disparaging of the Batei Knesset. That's exactly right. He says, but the goal is that they'll recognize so what's going to happen? But then, Am Yisrael, what if he already said, if an enemy comes, we're going to come here to daven. But then the enemy may come to daven. What if you have a conflict of interest? He says, what does he say? He says, but when we go to fight against them, exactly, we're going to daven. Now, Hashem, wait, little technical problem. Where are we? We're in the battlefield. So what else does he create? We're still going to do what? Even while we're on the battlefield, we're going to be facing right? Shlomo's the one to create this idea of davening towards the Beit HaMikdash. Even if you're not there, where are you davening towards? Yerushalayim. That's exactly what he says. And listen to Am Yisrael, right, when they're fighting against the enemy. Exactly. So here the whole point is right? This is so perfect for Erev Yom Yerushalayim. And Hashem, it's not just about what I built. This whole city, right, has significance. Right? It's a place that you chose. Kiach te'ulach, new unit. Kiach te'ulach, ki'en adam asher lo yechata. Okay, Hashem, we're going to mess up. What happens even if we realize we messed up when we davened here, and you still sent us to the battlefield, and in the battlefield we davened to you, and that also didn't work, and now we're in Chutz La'aretz. Now that you're in this world, in the Beit HaMikdash, even if we're like really far, we're still going to daven to you here. It's what we do till today. And ideally, pasuk nun. וסלחת לעמך אשר חטאו לך ולכל פשעיהם אשר פשעו בך ונתנן לרחמים לפני שאוהביהם וריחמם. כי עמך ונחלתך הם. So Bella feels a little better. Why should you listen to us? Because we're your am. You should favor us. We're your nachala. Asher hotitem mitzrayim mitoch kor habarzel. Yote nacha ptuchot. Hashem, please. Can you have a constantly open line? Al tchinat avtacha, vel tchinat amalek, malem b'chol kol umeilacha, ki ata igdaltam lachan lenachalam b'chol amei haaretz, kasher dibarta b'yam Moshe avdecha v'otiacha, et avoteinu b'mitzrayim, Hashem Elokim. Now take a look, by the way, right afterwards. Again, we have Vahi kachalot Shlomo lepalel Hashem et kol hatfila batchina hazot kam milifnei mizbech Hashem mikroa al birkav. What do we hear?
What?
And not only did he have his hands up, he started the Amidah, the Izashu Shlav. He went to Kriya al birkav, where still v'chapapu sota shemayim, and then v'yamol v'yivarech kol kal Yisrael. So what do we see from here? We already have had Hishtachabaya. We've had Moshe Nofel El Panav. We've had Elkanah, right? Meaning, we know about prostrating position. We've heard about Amidah by Abraham, but not clearly linked to tefillah. This is our first tefillah in what two positions? Amidah and, doesn't say, the kriya. Kriya adakav. Bidyuk. And back to Amidah. What do we learn from Shlomo? Not only an outline of when we daven, but how we daven.
Maybe
wow. Okay. It's a very nice idea. Everyone see this? This is amazing. Now, not only does this tefillah teach us about positions of tefillah, not does this tefillah establish the Beit HaMikdash as a makom tefillah, but this tefillah is also our longest tefillah in Tanakh. Right? Everyone see that? This is a good quiz question. Again, and therefore, again, it's important to recognize the different units here. So I'm just going to go through them very quickly with your Tanakh open in front of you. Again, look again at Psukim Lamed Aleph and Lamed Bet. That's a case, the very beginning.
People there.
Oh, I can see who it is?
Yeah.
Oh, now it's that.
I know who it is.
Okay, here we go. So let's take a look. Pasuk Lamed Aleph Lamed Bet. Again, is a case where someone swore his friend in front of the Mizbeach, and it's not clear, right, who the tzaddik, who the rasha is. So what is Shlomo asking? Hashem judge so that everyone gets the right thing. Now, this is interesting because the stories came on the backdrop of Perek Gimel, which is Mishpat Shlomo. What does Shlomo basically say? Do I know all the answers? No.
He knows.
That was a great case.
Everybody.
Not everybody, but Shlomo is also saying, yeah, but still there are certain cases where I don't have evidence. It's Sarah's word against yours. How do I know? Nachon? She harassed you, she didn't harass you. So what's Shlomo asking? Hashem, you judge them. Nachon? I only have whatever evidence I have. Okay, now Psukim Lamed Gimel Lamed Daled. And when there is defeat, when there's milchama and kibush, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu should answer the tefillah ta'am, yashiv et adama, right, and return us to the land. Lamed Hey Lamed Vav, we said is a batzoret, is a case of famine and drought that we're going to come to the Beit HaMikdash to ask for Geshem. Lamed Zayim Temem is all different personal issues as well. Take a look. He mentioned 6 different examples. Ra'av, right? Deber, which is any pandemic. Shidafon v'yirakon, right? Different agricultural diseases that affect particularly the wheat. Chasil va'arbeh, right? Obviously the locusts that affect the agriculture. Yetzer lo oivav, right? Any problems with our enemies, Iran, right? Kol nega v'chol machala. 6 different explanations. And basically he's opening it up to the Beit HaMikdash being a place where we dive in for what? Anything and everything. And therefore, whether it's internal, external, personal, and national, that's basically a big transformation in an understanding of tefillah. Psukim and Aleph and Gimel, he introduces the Nachrim, who, again, also can come to ask for whatever it is that they want. And Shlomo was saying, listen to them. But why? Not because I have a special relationship with you. Why should you listen to them? So it'll be a Kiddush Hashem. So it'll be a Kiddush Hashem. So they'll recognize how great your name is. Laman yedun kono amei haaretz shemcha shemecha liraltcha kemcha Yisrael v'ladat v'shemcha nekra ela ba'ita zer asher baniti. Them psukim mem dalet mem hey goes back. Okay, but when it's us versus them in war, of course, who should you listen to? Us. Again, which is that's the natural next step. And mem vav and nun aleph. And what if we still fall? What if we still are taken captive? Please listen. And even when basically, if you think about it, the last few psukim are not an independent tefillah. Rather, he's bringing us back to the very beginning, right? That tefillah and is something that, again, is a universal need. Now, notice, by the way, how many different piskaot are there then? Who was following this?
6.
Close? 7. 7, right? That, which is very interesting. And that, I don't think it's by chance, but what is he trying to say? Firstly, there's a Seder Tefillah, what we call today our Sidur Tefillah. And what is the common denominator between all these? Amcha, beautiful. again, tefillah connected to the Beit HaMikdash, obviously, but one can even argue that it's not just about the Beit HaMikdash, it's also about Ha'ir Asher Bacharta, right? This is our pre-Yom Yerushalayim shir. And it's also about Yerushalayim, and it's also about tefillah. Hashem Yishma Tefillah, that Hashem's transcendence, which is manifest in the whole world, should be imminent now through coming to the Beit HaMikdash. Wow! איזה כיף, אתה עשית לי את היום. Wow! איזה יופי. And therefore what we see is basically the idea of the significance of the Beit HaMikdash. As a makom tefillah, Yerushalayim hinei, that on one hand, hinei Hashemayim v'shmei Hashemayim, lo yichal kalucha. On the other hand, again, okay, there should be Hashrat Shekhinah here, and it shouldn't be limited, but it should be concentrated. Oh my, it's beautiful. Shalom. Shalom. Wow. עיניים רק לאמא ולסבתא, וגם לשמוע דברי תורה. Look at that. Wow. ממש, ממש. Isn't that something? I know. Okay, here we go. And then the kids don't understand. I say, it's okay. One day you'll also have this. Okay, back to our Hashrat Shekhinah. So clearly the Shekhinah is not limited to the Beit HaMikdash, and rather, right, he's explaining this should be, right, a natural place where we turn to you in tefillah, what we discuss about the nature of the Beit Knesset. So again, he first explained that this is a new phenomenon. Now there's a Beit HaMikdash. Secondly, now that tefillah should be connected to the Mikdash. Basically, he's saying, we're going to have a Beit HaMikdash no matter what, but it shouldn't just be a place of sacrifice. It should be a place of tefillah, right? And therefore, Hashem should accept the tefillah from his Machon Shivto. Where is Machon Shivto? Really, Bashamayim. And then Hashem should answer. And we'll see the answer is basically through the Beit HaMikdash, right? So what these are basically the ideas, the progression, right, from a new concept, right? Not just a concept of a Beit HaMikdash, but really of a tefillah being here. And I think that Chazal talk about this, understanding that Shlomo to a certain degree created the first sidur, right? The first literally arrangement of our bakashot. So the Gemara in Brachot Daf Lamed Amud Aleph says, Tanu Rabbanan, Suma, Omi she'eno yachol lechaven et haruchot. Let's say someone who's blind, right, who doesn't know direction. What should he do? Yachaven libo keneged aviv shebashamayim. What should he think of? Hashem in Shamayim, right? Isn't that interesting? Shenamar vitpalu el Hashem. So what does that mean to daven to God? Not to a particular place or by it, anywhere. Haya omed b'chutz la'aretz. But if you're in chutz la'aretz already, then where should you? Then yachaven et libo keneged Eretz Yisrael shenamar vitpalu elacha derech artzam. Everyone notice all these quotes from Tfilat Shlomo. Okay. Haya omed b'Eretz Yisrael yachaven et libo keneged Yerushalayim shenamar vitpalu el Hashem derech ha'ir asher b'charta Tfilat Shlomo. Haya omed b'Yerushalayim yachaven et libo keneged Beit HaMikdash, and Amar vitpalu al habayit hazeh. Haya omed bebeit HaMikdash, yachaven et libo keneged Beit Kodshei HaKadoshim, shenamar vitpalu el hamakom hazeh. That's where he is. Haya omed bebeit Kodshei HaKadoshim, yachaven et libo keneged Beit HaKaporet. Haya omed acharei Beit HaKaporet, yireh atzmo ki'ilu lefnei HaKaporet. Nimsa omed b'mizrach. So if you're on the eastern side, what side are you going to face? The Kodesh Kodashim, machzir panav le'ma'arav. Ma'arav, machzir panav le'mizrach. Badarom, machzir panav le'tzafon. Batzafon, machzir panav le'darom. Nimsu'u kol Yisrael, machavnim et livam. Right, you ever go to Har HaZitim? And so interesting to daven towards, Amash, you're davening towards the Ma'arav, right, as opposed to davening Mizrach. And here you're davening Tzafona. So basically, right, all the arrows pointing to the Beit HaMikdash. Machavnim et livam lemakom echad. Amar Rababim bi'itema Rabbi Avina. My kara b'migdal David Tzavarech banui letalpiot til shekol piot onim bo. So what's interesting? Except for the Summa. What's the problem with the Summa? Or which, by the way, well, you don't know which direction you're in, right? You don't have your iPhone with your compass. What do? Why is that okay? I thought Shlomo was saying it should be through the Beit HaMikdash because he begins by saying, where's your Machon Shivto? There. That's your transcendence. But your immanence is also now going to be manifest, particularly here. That's the key idea. Now, by the way, what else do you see from even the Gemara itself, that there are shlavim shomim to the Kedusha, right? That we go higher and higher. Someone in Chutz La'aretz can't go straight to the Kodesh Kodashim. Right? You have to make Aliyah, and then Lat Yerushalayim, teaching us as well that don't, I always tell people with Tefillah that it's not, from 0 to 10. It's shlag. So with all the messages of Tfilat Shlomo, we're going to take a look and actually jump to Chutz La'aretz and see then who really is the first person to teach us that even though Yechezkel delivers Nivuot looking at Yerushalayim, how do you know, right, that when you're so far away, when you become so used to having, right, this close relationship with the Beit HaMikdash, how even in Chutz La'aretz, the Tefillah is still effective. Stay tuned for 3 weeks from now. Nesiat Tova u'Mevorechet and Yom Yerushalayim Sameach and Zman Matan Torah Miromim.
Tomorrow? Today?
Thursday. Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone. Toda.
Shavua Tov, thank you.
Tov, thank you.